Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. You are very welcome. This is an event organized by the LIA Foundation, that is a no-profit foundation created by the Italian Publisher Association and the Italian Blind Union. And its goal is to create a fully accessible publishing ecosystem. The event is organized in the Aldus UP project, that is a project funded by the European Commission, where we have the goal to create a lot of events to create awareness and provide information to the publishing industry on how to produce and distribute accessible publication. So we decided to invite 3 organizations that we are on different way working with, and with different area of interest. And I think it could be quite, we hope, useful to you to listen to them. I will leave the floor to
Christina. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Christina. Good afternoon. My name is Porter Anderson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Publishing Perspectives, the news medium of Frankfurt Book Fair, and we are tasked with trying to cover the international publishing industry, which on some days seems almost as hectic as on today. But what a joy to be here together and to be talking about so many good things, and to have a chance to do this panel, which I've been looking forward to all the time, because this is such an interesting and challenging and yet worthwhile issue in publishing. And we're seeing so much progress, not least thanks to Fondazione LIA. They are doing such great work. They're really leading the way and helping publishers to understand what's needed and how to do it. So it's great to be here. We were doing this last year. It's good to be doing it again this year. And it's always a great discussion. I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll enjoy it. We are going to, thanks to Christina's entry, we are going to listen first to Irene, who's going to tell us an overview of the actions that have been carried out in educational publishing in her house, which is Zanichelli. And would you speak to us about this?
I will speak about how it is important to have a strategy for accessibility,
exactly.
And how this innovation can also be a business opportunity, not only a cost. That's the aim of mine.
Fantastic, please, yeah. Good, good.
So shall I go on?
Yes, please do.
Sorry, there is should be a presentation of which so both for the presentation, which I hope will. Now I have a lot of things to do. So
you're right. This is probably my presentation.
I think so.
I think I'm to talk through the introduction with this. Yes, would you like that? Actually, it's gone quite dark now. It may be coming to your presentation.
Here it is.
This is you. Yeah, go right ahead, since
next.
we've got this one loaded.
It works. So my point, and I have to wear my glasses because, it's in theme with the day. And first of all, I have to thank Maurizio Mattioli, and who is with us here, who is manager of digital products in Zanichelli, and he's been very proactive in all this work towards reaching accessibility, also possibly behind time, but in time. And he has been working for 4 years with LIA, with Cristina Mussinelli. And I thank both of them, and I thank Maurizio both for the presentation and for what I will try to explain to you that we did. So the first question is, why is it important to have a strategy about accessibility for a school publisher, a textbook publisher for school? We publish for children from 6th to 13th grade. Actually, in Italy we have 13 grades, 13 grades, and for university. And the reasons are at least 3. And the first one is the legal constraint. We have less than 100 weeks before June 25, 2025. It's getting close. Then there are of course, and before that, ethical reasons. We want the content, especially educational content, to be available for each individual. But I also want to show that there is a business opportunity. The workflows can become better, and also products may improve for everyone. So essentially, I will talk to you about the product we work on is a digital book which is essentially an EPUB that comes from the InDesign we use for doing our print books. And we had to optimize the InDesign to obtain the EPUB, and this process of optimization turned out to be better also to obtain the paper book or the digital books that have a fixed layout. Of course, it costed a lot to think and realize this optimized workflow, but then it is worth having done it. With accessibility, we might have a user-based growth. Here are a few examples, very famous. One is subtitles, the ramp, or the electric toothbrush. They were all thought for people who had some kind of difficulty, but we all use them. Think about the subtitles that we use for watching movies in their original language or any of the others. And here is an example. It is based, so you can see the chart which comes from the Microsoft website dedicated to inclusive design. And it explains how we all can experience disability. Some of us experience permanent disabilities at a certain point in their lives. We all experience temporary disabilities or situational disabilities. And I hope you see the example. They are so easy to read. This applies also to the digital book. Numbers say that in Italy, we have 3.8 students with disabilities, but there are at least 10% of students who only have their smartphone as a digital device. And it can happen to all of us to only have a smartphone as a digital device. So the flowable ebook is readable on a smartphone, while the other ebooks we did were not. So in this sense, we have reached a wider audience for our product. And we do better products for all. There, on the screen, you might see what is the library of our textbooks, and it has been, now it is fully accessible. To do that, we had to redesign the layout, and it is now more readable, more easy to use also for everyone, actually. This rethinking came out better for all. Now there is a point, it is worth being alone. About inclusion, in our flowable textbooks, we use the Microsoft Immersive Reader, which is a very powerful toolbook. And we used it actually as a marketing point, but actually we found out this year that many students with difficulties are not using it because they want to use always the same software. So since we are the only one to have it, they would not change from one software to another. So it's better so we hope that we know that other platforms will join us in that choice. we all know that it's very easy to be lazy with software. To change from one software to another is harder than from moving from a place to another for some reason. And this was sort of a surprise for us, but we found out that. So there were costs, of course. We had to change the workflow from what the authors gives us to the digital book, and it came to a cost. We had to learn how to be able to do inclusive design, and all of this had a cost in terms of training of the editorial team and all the designers who work with us, the developers. Most of it was a one-time cost. So, but there are also costs that will last, and we think that it will be a 5% of the cost of the digital products. So, but we also think, as I told before, that this is an investment both for ethical and legal matters, but also because we get better products. There is still a long way to go, and the difficult point we think now is the alternative text for images. That there is a lot to do, and we hope that artificial intelligence will do a lot of work, at least as something we could a way not to start from zero, from someone in front of an image has to find out how to describe it, but with a good, there are already good programs, softwares that allows you with a basis to work, like, a little bit like with translations, that most is done, but you have to be then able to understand very well the context and make a perfect product or an optimal product. And I think that's my contribution today. Thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to see an actual case study like that, and the success that you're making of it, because it's not necessarily easy, at least until it's understood, until everyone is with it. You know, we find that in many companies, once a staff understands where they are, this becomes second nature. But the steps that have to be done and the understanding that goes ahead of it takes a little while. So this is a great presentation. Thank you. Elisa, is that you back there? Is it possible to load the intro that you had here for me to talk through some of the background here? I realized that was probably the piece that I was going to go through, and I thought it was yours, so that's why we jumped it. But I'd like to give you some of the good background that Elisa has provided here so that we are all on the same page about the issue itself. And a lot of it will illuminate exactly what you've just told us, Irene. Here, of course, is our page for who we are, and we are joined also, as well as by Irene, who's just spoken to with us, by Michael Tamblyn, one of my great friends. We end up on stages all over the world like this at strange times and strange places. And because he's a terrific leader in the industry, not only through Kobo's power, Rakuten Kobo's power in terms of ebooks and distribution, quite a leader on the international stage, and particularly during the pandemic, some very, very thoughtful gestures going on there. But also, he's very innovative. I was praising him this morning when we were doing a panel with Nihar Malavia, the new CEO of Penguin Random House, and saying that this is the guy who actually came to us in Berlin. Gosh, how many years was that we were doing it? 6 or 7 years ago, and started talking about the attention economy and helped us understand the competition that's coming toward people who are reading and toward publishers who are trying to publish and keep those readers, right? And this was one of the most helpful concepts that certainly of that year and of several years that we were able to start working with as press members. That journalists really need that kind of concept to grab onto where publishing is and what it's up against. So in the same way that Christina and Elisa have given us so much information about accessibility and its challenges, Michael frequently comes up with points of understanding in terms of where the market is going and what the entire industry is facing. It's been a fascinating momentary relationship back and forth in all of our meetings around the world as we speak together. So I'm glad he's here. And Tobias is with us from Holtzbrinck. It's so good to have you with us because you guys have been doing some very interesting work, and we're going to be hearing from you about that too. May I borrow your clicker and see if I can push ourselves through? We're sharing the clicker. Isn't that nice? In the United Nations, of course, we are seeing the evolution of the context we're talking about with the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And there is the Agenda 2030. I think I'm wearing my Sustainable Development Goals chain here, as you can see, as a matter of fact, because we're all aware of so much on 2030. But in international and EU legislation, we in the States, we're just in awe of some of the things that are being done in Europe. There's the Marrakesh Treaty out of WIPO, something that I've been very, very interested in and very proud of, because the accessions are so good now. There's so many countries jumping on. The European Web Directive and the EU Accessibility Act, which we've been mentioning here, which is coming, are wonderful steps forward, and technological innovation driver coming out of mainstream accessibility. All of these things are bringing to the market more and more awareness, more and more pressure, as Ann Bergman and I frequently talk about, when so many outfits are trying to understand the pressures of the industry. And so I think there's a lot to look forward to. We're moving into a great moment. It's going to be a difficult moment at times, a challenge for some of our companies, but it's a great time to see this happen. So it's very nice. The European Accessibility Act is going to apply to new products and services on the market, including ebooks and their ecosystem. And it starts, as Irene was reminding us, June 28, 2025. So do not rest on your laurels. We all have to start looking very sharp. This is some of the interesting material, I think, because it helps us understand the readers that we're trying to reach and the part of the market that we're trying to serve with this good work. Blindness and visual impairment, 253 million people. It is 3.2% of the world's population. Very few people understand or realize this. You can tell a new audience something like that. I know that there are many of you here are experienced in this, but some who have never heard of it, they just drop their mouths when they hear how many are actually up against this set of challenges. Disabling deafness and hearing loss, 466 million people, 6% of the world's population. Intellectual disability, about 200 million people. That's something we're very concerned about in many cases now. 2.6% of the world's population. In some of our markets, might be mine, the plethora of available weapons then starts to tie into intellectual disability as we speak about mental illness in some cases, and this can be a real problem. In most cases, what we're classifying as intellectual disability is not that, but nevertheless, it is something that becomes part of the risk factor in any society today and has great meaning when you start looking at it across the board in the spectrum. People who need a wheelchair on a daily basis, 75 million, 1% of the world's population.
Oh no, even in disability, I'm a minority.
You know, minority.
My God. Shaped.
You see, there you are. And actually, you are in a minority in our panel today, too, you see. There are all kinds of minorities that are not in the world. She's absolutely right. And people like me are starting to remember that, you know. According to the European Disability Forum, in 2019, there were over 100 million people with disabilities in the European Union. This is a much bigger number than I would have ever guessed. I've seen these figures before. According to the World Health Organization and figures dated from 2010, it's estimated that in Europe there are 2.5 million blind people. There are 23.8 million people with low vision. There are 26.3 million people with visually impaired conditions that they're dealing with, and the number of European citizens with dyslexia and specific learning disorders ranges between 9 and 12% of the population. It's much more prevalent than many of us realize, often because stigma keeps this hidden from us, right? The new accessible digital ecosystem, which is something that these good folks are working with so heavily, has a kind of a virtuous circle, as you see there, with distribution platforms, aggregators, services, reading devices and solutions, and digital publications and metadata coming together in the way we need it to born accessible and mainstream accessibility impacts the entire ecosystem, because as this thing moves, it's like dominoes. As this thing moves through the publishing ecosystem, everything is affected, everything gets better, all the boats float, right? It's very great to see. Why strive for accessibility? Social responsibility, legislation, quality, and business value. It's interesting to see a publisher's eyes light up when you say, think of all the extra business. And it's fascinating to see that catch on, and it's a great thing as it spreads. The old way and the new way. I was talking about born accessible, and mainstream accessibility is producing new products and services designed to be accessible for everyone from the beginning. This is what we were just hearing. Adopting international standards and following international guidelines, defining workflows, internal or external, verification procedures for accessibility, and providing end users with accessible information. Accessibility information. This is my favorite slide in the thing. Pure quality, the cowboy way. Yes, I should have brought my cowboy hat, don't you think? Yeah, I love this. Thank you to Elisa for that. Accessibility involves bringing together a lot of factors in the process, skills, workflows, digital publications, metadata, very important. International open standards, platforms, websites, and apps. I go to metadata because in journalism, we are so sensitive to what we put out and what can be found by our readers. It's the most important part. I could put out the most marvelous story you ever read, a brilliant article. I wish that were the case. But if they can't find it, it's not going to do them any good, right? This is exactly the same kind of thing. It is discoverability within the accessible world. Metadata is still with us. So in terms of what we're doing this afternoon, that's the background on where we come to this. And the pleasure now I have is to give you to Michael Tamblyn, who is, oh no, you want that, green button, who is going to give us a very interesting understanding of where his thinking is on this and what's going on in terms of what he's seeing. Michael, it is all yours. You need a mic? Here we go. Thank you. You'll want that.
And like Irene, I'm going to juggle microphone, clicker, and notes all at the same time from the seat. Looking at accessibility as a digital retailer means that we're taking responsibility for a couple of different parts of the reading experience, not just how people find books, but also how they experience those books, what they look like on our e-readers, in our apps, how those books are presented, what controls and options we give to allow people to adjust them, and how users can kind of change them to meet their different reading needs. So as we get ready for new EU regulations that impact ebooks, we're really in this interesting spot because we have parts that are very much under our control, parts that are coming from publishers, and then a responsibility to keep our reader reading. And there are two ways to look at it. I think some people see this as a compliance exercise. It's extra effort, it's extra cost, it's something that they have to do. But we've taken the view that this is a great opportunity for us as people who are interested in helping readers read more in more ways. We get to be more inclusive, we get to eliminate barriers that keep people from reading, but we also are preparing for demographic shifts in the book industry, and we're solving some commercial problems at the same time. When we think about accessibility, there are a couple of numbers that are in our minds constantly. There's this one, we all know this one, but there are also these ones. And with these, 2013 and 10 are the statistics that we focus on the most. 20% is the population that's considered to have a disability requiring some kind of assistance. 13% is really important because we are in the reading business. 13% of adults over the age of 40 in North America and European countries have some form of macular degeneration, making it harder for them to read. It's the part of visual degradation that most commonly impacts reading as people get older. And the latest prevalence studies show that 25% of adults 60 years or older have some form of macular degeneration, which is important not just because that's a lot of people, it's also one of the most valuable book buying demographics that we have. So keeping that population reading as they proceed through the life course is really important. So there's the 3.2% which Porter raised earlier, which is really blindness and severe visual impairment. This is talking about everything before that just makes reading more and more difficult. And is like, when people talk about aging out of reading, that tends to be what they're talking about. And then we have the 10% of technology users who are using some kind of visual assistive technology today. And that's everything from having Zoom turned on your iPhone to using a text-to-speech screen reader. And those numbers are especially important, and I'm glad the panel is made up the way it is, because Irene's really looking at everything from kind of early years of reading through school and education, and we're interested in all of that through to kind of the other end of the life course. Europe is getting older, and especially because Europe, North America, and Japan are all seeing a demographic shift. We're going to have 30% of the EU population who's 65 years or older by 2050. So we're not just talking about a thin slice of the population. We're talking about a significant part of the population who are dealing with issues that are going to be related to visual accessibility, especially in the future. This is a place where ebooks work really well. We like to call ourselves the only transition from analog to digital that isn't being driven by 18 to 25-year-olds. We're as likely to have a 45-year-old or a 55-year-old reading ebooks as we are to have an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old. And that's because you can make fonts bigger, plain and simple. But to do this well requires a lot more than that. We need to embrace a whole range of technologies that can make the experience better, from the basics of being able to make content adjustable, to making sure that we are making use of the information that comes from publishers to show the accessibility features that are inside a piece of content, to making sure that what we're putting in front of a customer, from the store experience all the way through to the reading experience, is compatible with screen readers, braille readers, text-to-speech interfaces, and more. And to be very, very clear, we are not perfect at this. And sometimes we have actually been very bad at it. But we are learning and we're getting better. And what's most encouraging for me is that as we learn, we are getting better faster. And so we can look at a couple of different examples from that. This is a component of our homepage that is used for an ebook daily deal. And it looks okay. Yeah, we have a book, we have a price, we have a title, but it's actually an accessibility nightmare as we went through the testing process for it. The reading order, you'll see that we have title and author separated by columns. That information means that you don't have title and author coming up in the same order as you're looking at this in a screen reader, which will tend to progress down a page as opposed to going back and forth. So you either have to jump around or it just looks disjointed, especially on text-to-speech or in a braille reader. This lovely prismatic background that we have of various tones of gray looks nice, but it lowers the contrast, it makes it harder to read. And then under the hood, there are other problems with the way that this page is structured that makes it hard to navigate by keyboard or by screen reader. So the new version, redesigned with accessibility in mind, has a clearer content order. The hierarchy of content as you move down the page is really what we want to see first, second, third when someone's going through. You'll note that there is no background. It is black on white. So we have the highest contrast possible. Every element of the screen of the text is resizable. So if someone's dialing up the size of the font, through their browser, all of this is scaling with it. And then under the hood, the code is written for this component to ensure that you can progress by keyboard or screen reader and still have the full experience of all of the content on the page. So, and that's just one page component of a very large site. Multiply that by hundreds of different places on kobo.com where we're engaging with the customer. And you can see that this kind of repair process can take a long time, like this account setting page. This was the original one. It had all kinds of problems too. We have black text on gray backgrounds, which makes it harder to read. We have a 2-column format that's hard for keyboard navigation and screen readers. We have multiple save buttons just to confuse people even further, so you don't really know which one you have to hit when you're saving something. And then a new page, which is much more stripped down, much more simplified. Complex elements are hidden. All text is resizable. We've reduced visual clutter with expandable menus. Wayfinding is easier. It can be navigated with a keyboard. It can be read through with a screen reader. And again, it doesn't look like a huge difference. But for a user with assistive technologies, it's the difference between being able to get through the page or getting lost entirely. And what's great about this is that while we're eliminating these barriers for people who are using assistive technologies, it actually makes it easier for everyone. This really is a tide that floats all boats. Both of these are examples on the e-commerce side. They're also both examples of having to repair an existing interface, upgrade it to make it more accessible. We spend a lot of time in repair mode as we're going through and updating parts of the site to make sure that everything that we previously built is accessible. But we're now moving as our developers, as our designers, as our user experience experts are becoming more familiar, able to work in a mode that's more accessible by design. When we start a project now, we're incorporating accessibility design elements from the beginning and testing for accessibility as a part of the development process as we go. So the most recent example of that is our web reader. It's our fully functioning ebook reader that's accessible by the browser. People usually read their ebooks on our e-readers and apps, but reading on the desktop is getting more and more popular, especially for people with accessibility needs. So each menu is now easier to read. It can be accessed by a screen reader. It can be parsed for text-to-speech. It also supports dyslexic-friendly fonts, in addition to our regular serif and sans serif options. And as we developed each new version of this service, we also passed it to our accessibility QA partners. We work with a company called Fable, who matches us with live users who are using different kinds of assistive and accessibility technologies in their regular daily lives. And so then we're getting real live user feedback from people that are accessing it as a course of their daily lives, as opposed to having to rely on kind of usability and accessibility theory. They're not afraid to tell us when we've gotten something wrong, and that's fantastic for us to be working with people who just have that lived experience every day. But going forward, I said we're kind of not caught in the middle, but we're in the middle, the user on one side, the publisher on the other. What we need from publishers is accessibility data, metadata in Onyx. We're in the middle of an excellent pilot project right now where we have the LIA Foundation working with our retail partners in Italy, Mondadori, and we are their first case study retailer where LIA is producing accessibility metadata for Mondadori. It's getting incorporated back into their metadata feeds. Then we get to receive it as a retailer and then make sure that we're displaying it properly. There's a lot of work to be done between organizations like LIA and publishers to make sure that those accessibility metadata fields are being interpreted properly, that we as retailers all display them with a level of consistency so that when someone moves from site to site, store to store, retailer to retailer, they see those attributes and they can make good sense of them and they can interpret them appropriately. So we're really excited to be a part of that, and we hope that that's just the beginning of a lot of work that keeps Fondazione LIA very busy in the future. In addition to that, publishers need to be working on their accessible EPUBs in EPUB 3.0. We need full tables of contents. We need parsable headings. We need image alt text so badly I can't even describe it. Footnote links and web links. And this is the kind of thing that that can be tested and certified by LIA, and they do a great job of it. Following those best practices for making ebooks is then really helpful for us because we can make sure that all of our display technologies keep up with interpreting those and displaying those properly. We want to have everything that we can from publishers and be ready to go by the end of 2024. That means metadata in from publishers, EPUB updated and ready to display. Because we want to be spending the last 6 months working on how we're displaying that to the customer as opposed to chasing publishers to get it. And I mean, the last thing that I'll say about this is, we're not just doing this for the person who's buying the book now. Remember that books persist in time. And so we're doing this for the person who buys a book now and then wants to read it again 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, or 20 years from now. And I've always said that I want to get all of this fixed before this becomes a problem that I have to deal with. So in many ways, all of this is about my future-proofing my own reading life. But this is the one thing that we can guarantee is going to happen to absolutely everyone in this room. And of course, age-related issues are not the only kind of accessibility that we're dealing with, but it's the one that we could guarantee we're all going to run into. So that's the one that I'm highlighting here. And it's certainly one of the ones that represent the largest economic opportunity for everyone in this room, is making sure that all the way through the life course, from accessibility at early ages right through until people's true final chapter, they're able to engage with the books and the authors that they love. Thank you.
Very good. It's a terrific presentation. And tell me one thing. What is the hardest thing in all of this for you? What's the biggest challenge?
I think there's one of those one-to-many challenges, which is just getting all publishers moving on metadata, on EPUB accessibility features. Mm-hmm. That's on one side. On the organizational side, it's baking accessibility best practices into the product development cycle. Right. So not just having one person who's the accessibility specialist, but every person who's building an iOS app, an Android app, who's building the software for an e-reader has those principles in mind and doesn't even have to think about it. And that's the slow change that happens over time. But as so much of it just comes from engaging with readers who are making use of those assistive technologies, and then you see you're unlocking reading for people who previously just find it really hard to access.
Exactly. It's so inspiring when that happens. That's what I was talking about seeing. Once you get buy-in from everybody, once you get that staff together and they know where they're going and they understand the reason, as you're saying. It's pretty great, but it does take time. Have you found that this took more staff? Was there a need for you to actually get more manpower on board for this, or were you able to do it with what you have?
We had some people on staff. There's a fantastic advocate in our company named Wendy Reed, who kind of transitioned her role over time to being more and more about being the champion for accessibility within the company.
That's great.
And so she became a resource that people could go to, an educator within the company, and also someone who's pulling in different resources that could help us up our game. And so it's, whether it's the work that's happening on W3C, the work that's happening with organizations like LIA, finding testing organizations like Fable, having some people who are really passionate about the space just makes all that happen faster.
Right. They'll chase the others for you, which is kind of useful. Yeah. I have a sustainability session tomorrow with a very interesting person. Rachel Martin from Elsevier has taken the lead to such a degree as their director of sustainability issues that she's now flying all over the world working with other companies. And she's going to be talking to our group at the Publishing Perspectives Forum. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. This is at 11 a.m. tomorrow. About medium and small size companies that are trying to move toward the Sustainable Development Goals and trying to make sure that they're getting the carbon footprint right and where it should be, because unlike Elsevier, a very big company, they don't have the resources. But what it takes is a Rachel, in my case, a Wendy in your case, who can just chase them around the coffee table until they all start to realize what this is about. Then they can become very enthusiastic about it, and they all pull their weight. So yeah, I've seen this before. This is a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Michael. Tobias, will you talk to us? Your group, your work group at Holtzbrinck, I know, went into some adaptation and process and everything. And I think some of what you've done has had to do with the Börsenverein's group on metadata. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will mention a bit. Thank you first for your both presentations. They were really very interesting for me. Also a bit frustrating because you took half of my topics. So my presentation will be very short. And
we want to hear it from you, Tobias.
No, it's not so terrible. I want to tell a bit about how we try to become an accessible publisher, as we are at the beginning of the supply chain. And as we heard before, we have to deliver the right information, the right products. And at the end, I also want to say a bit about the metadata, the status of accessible metadata, because we, in the last few years, I would say, we had the challenge that we could not deliver all the information that are necessary to really to show which kind of accessibility the products have. And before I start, thank you very much to the team of the book fair for this ramp to make it accessible. Next time, in 1 hour, I will be at the Random House, and this is a new challenge for them. Now they have to bring me on stage there. But here, thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for this very accessible clicker. As you can see, you cannot do anything wrong. Now I can. It works. First, our publishing group, maybe you don't know all, because Holtzbrinck is not the name we publish books with. So to the Holtzbrinck Buchverlage I'm working for, we have 4 big publishers in Germany, S. Fischer in Frankfurt, Rowohlt from Hamburg, Drömer und Knauer from Munich, and Kiepenheuer und Witsch in Köln, and also now Argon as our audiobooks publisher. And I'm consulting them mostly in the topic metadata, optimization, SEO, visibility, as you mentioned it. And we also maintain some systems for them, the websites. That's why I want to tell you about our experience in behalf of accessibility about this. So first we wanted to check how accessible is our publisher and how can we become more accessible. And we found out we cannot be an accessible publisher. So because there's so many things we have to think about, there's many disabilities, but this should be your goal. And if you're good, you become let's say a low barrier publisher. In Germany, we would say barrierearmer Verlag, because there's many things you could focus on. So at the beginning, and I would say we are not at the end, but we are on the way to this. So and if you start, I would focus on these 3 topics. Yes, first the products, we heard this before. What you have to think about there, mainly the ebooks. Then the second thing is the e-commerce. And our publishers don't have our own e-commerce platform. From a law point of view, we don't have to be completely accessible with our websites, but as we want to sell there, and we also want to have the opportunity to sell to all the people. That's why we have the target to get all our internet platforms, websites, mailings, social media accessible, and I will focus a bit on this as well. But there is many other topics that you could focus on, like access to the buildings. So in my case, as you can see, I was the first proof of concept for the accessibility of all those houses I mentioned before, and I could get into them at least after Rowohlt moved from Rheinbeck to Hamburg. Now they are fully accessible. Yes, and I'm very proud of this. You also could look on the working environment. Gladly in Germany, we have a lot of support also from government and from different institutions for this. You could look on your recruiting procedure, because there's also some areas that are not accessible for everyone, and this is, in my experience, also a big problem. So if you make barriers there, then you will not find those people who might have a disability, but also might be the next genius in a topic that you definitely need in your publishing house. And also the benefits for employees. Before I came into my team, mostly it was like hiking into the mountains. Now we don't hike into the mountains, but we do a canopy walk, which is accessible, for example. So there are many other areas, but I just want to focus on the 3 topics at the beginning. We heard about the ebooks, so I can skip this a bit. For us, important were those necessary changes, like integrating accessibility into the workflows and into all the proofs at different levels. And yes, also the alt texts are quite the biggest challenge for this. For all the pictures, all the illustrations. We have also children's books, so they are, and we have also some Geschenkbücher. What is Geschenkbücher in English? Hard work for giving books for presents. So where you have.
Coffee table.
Thank you. Yes, and they have a lot of pictures, a lot of illustrations, and they are numbered from 001 to 200. And then you have to find the alt text for this. So we also will use, hopefully get good tools. I saw some also here in the book fair working with AI to help us to get good alt text for this, mark foreign language passages, and so on and so on. There are challenges, especially with old backlist titles, when you have only a very cheesy PDF, which was converted once to a EPUB and then never touched again. Yes. And if you have non-consistent data structure, also a big problem. Luckily, we have a common XML data structure for all the publishers. So our production teams worked for a long time together about to improve this. So this was really not the biggest challenge for us. But you should also focus on the opportunities, like optimizing the workflows, as we heard before, and also, for example, enabling your semantic search on your image database, because you could use those alt text, and mostly they also come with some tags that you could use to improve your search in your own houses, for example. Yes, but so my special topic about accessibility in the last 2 years was the websites. We have 16 websites for the publishers at the moment. And what helped us a lot was really the checklist of the Börsenverein, which we used just to make a simple Google Sheets table and to go through all those websites to see what are the biggest challenges, what are the to-dos there. Then we implemented those technical optimizations together with our partners, our internet agencies, and provided those also instructions for the creation of accessible advertising materials for the marketing departments. I found out that most of the marketing departments already had some guidelines, some best practices for this. This was really good. And yes, if necessary, you have to optimize the existing content like videos or audios for accessibility. So this were the 4 steps we went through. With the mailings, it's a bit simple, a bit easier because they follow a bit the rules like websites. Most of the publishers will send HTML email mailings, so you just can follow the rules of the websites. You must ensure that the presentation is perfect on any medium that you can imagine. There are also tools for this. And also here we have to provide instructions for the creation of accessible mailings. Luckily, in social media, we can rely a bit on the platforms so that they improve their front ends, what they did in the last years. There is still a bit of improvement. For us as a content provider there, it's important to have all the content with a combining text, which is kind of the alt text for the pictures, to have subtitles for videos, and to have in mind that all the stickers and emojis are not accessible on all the devices. On some they are, but not on all. This is our checklist that we used, and we had only 4 tables. We had about 10 or 14, I would say, because there is 14 steps in the checklist of the Börsenverein. I just can recommend it to use this and to start with this. At the end, we optimized our 16 websites, and we are also not at the end, I must say. We have one publisher with a very popular and famous orange color in the logo. Now you can guess which publisher. And orange color on a white screen is really hard to read and to understand. So we have a contrast issue there. So we are still in a process, and we had 50 tickets for the internet agency to solve, and they used more than 100 development hours. That sounds much, but when you break it down from 16 websites on your website of your publisher, then it means, okay, you have maybe development of 2 days, and then you can make your website accessible, because it's also a question of the content on the website, not only technical issues that you have to solve. But yeah, most of them are technical, and then you can solve them not too much effort. What were our learnings? Don't hesitate, start. We heard a lot about the 100 weeks, which gives me also a heartbreaking moment. So don't hesitate. You should start immediately, because there is more to do than you expect. Raise awareness about accessibility in your company. We also experienced that many people are aware for this topic. Either they have somebody in the family, or they have a disability that you don't see. Me, for example, my biggest challenge to read books is also that my eyes are not too good, and this is more a question of age than that I have a disability from birth on or something. So I'm a big Hobo fan from the beginning. Really appreciate it. And yes, and I was reading the e-books and using the e-readers because I can hold them much easier than a book, for example, than a heavy book. So now I know why you did not mention this target group like me, because we are only 1%, as I heard before. Okay. Yeah, and another learning, it's a process to get accessible products. It's not this one workflow that makes everything better. So that's why you should improve step by step. And also, talk about this in your own company and to realize, yeah, we have only 5% books which aren't really accessible at the moment. So we know what's to do next. And this was mentioned many times today, and I just can also say that accessibility is a way to reach new customers more than you see at the first glimpse and more that you expect. The task force at the Börsenverein also had a task force or an action group, however you call it, for the metadata, and to find improvements and necessary changes about the metadata. So the status at the moment is that we had a great enrichment of the Onyx list 196. That means that e-publication accessibility details can be delivered now. There came 19 new codes with it. So you don't have to know it, what that means. Just go to your metadata managers in your house and tell them about this, and they will encrypt it for you and will tell you what you can now give as information about your products. And it would really help to have best practices like we had this Leitfaden from the Börsenverein for PDF, for website, for EPUBs, would help to have also this for the metadata, because this is just the beginning of a change process when you have a paper that you can give around, etc. And as we know, optimizing our metadata is the key to make those new accessible products really visible to the customer. Yeah, thank you very much.
And while I'm afraid we're out of time and don't have a chance to have questions, you have come in right on the button with your timing. Perfect job, Tobias. And I want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you, Irene. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Tobias. And thank you, Christina and Elisa, for having us once more. Would you like a mic?
Yes.
Having it up with you.
We don't have time now to answer questions, but we will have a networking event in Room Concord now. We can just move there. The networking event is organized in collaboration with Börsenverein and the Frankfurt Book Fair. Everyone is invited. If you want more information, if you have doubt, if you want to know better, and we from Fondazione LIA will be very happy to welcome you. Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.